Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Hi, Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Nedarim Ayin. We are actually on Samach Tesamad Beis, at the third line from the bottom of the Yom. So we know that a husband has two options regarding his wife's neder. He can either do hakama, confirm it, reinforce it, or hafara, disrupt it and cancel it. Likewise, a father to his daughter's neder. Here comes the shaila. Boy Rabba, kayam lichi. So husband says, look, your neder should be confirmed. Kayam lichi, and he adds a word. Hayom. Today. The kiyam will be only effective for today, which sounds like he wants it to be cancelled for tomorrow. He's been mekayim it for today only. Mahu, how do we deal with this expression? Mriyam rinan, shall we say? Commander Amar la mufar lichi lemachar. It is indeed as though he had clearly expressed his displeasure regarding the neder for long term. I want it to be around today, but no longer. And therefore we treat it like a hafara with respect from tomorrow going forward. And the Rush actually explains that the hafara will begin starting today, because we know that once today is up, you can no longer do hafara. So you can't start the hafara tomorrow. There's nothing to talk about. Rather, the hafara will be applied tomorrow, but the process will start today. So hakama should be today, but let's start a process in motion so that the hafara should actually disrupt the neder starting tomorrow. That's one way to look at it. Mi amrinan, shall we say, kimanda amar lemufar lichi lemachar. It is as though he clearly expressed his wish that the neder should become disrupted starting tomorrow, and therefore it's actually cancelled starting tomorrow. Or shall we say, look, did he actually say hafara tomorrow? No. He didn't clearly say that it should be disrupted for tomorrow. And as we're going to learn later in Ayin Tes, especially when it comes to hafara, you have to be clear. You have to negate it with words. Here it's just implied, perhaps just implied. When he says hakama today, there's a diuk, an implication that he wants hafara tomorrow, but he didn't actually say that. So, which way is it? Intim tzalema. If we will assume that it doesn't work. Fact is, he didn't. He didn't make a clear hafara. If that's the case, let's say that's a given. Okay? So what about the following situation? And the Ran points out that the Gemara now will say like this. Based on the previous notion, the assumption is that if indeed he would have said, clearly would have said, I want kiyum today and hafara tomorrow, it works. The question is only because he didn't actually say the hafara for tomorrow. It was only implied by the fact that he said hakama for today. So that was the question. But suppose he clearly expresses both wishes, hakama today and hafara tomorrow, as is. So he gets what he wants. But now the Gemara will tell us like this. Perhaps you can't do that. Because once you have the hakama today, you can no longer cancel the neder. It's affirmed, it's confirmed, it's established. So we're sort of switching tracks. Perhaps it doesn't work. Even if you would say it, kiyum today, hafara tomorrow, it wouldn't work. It's not just because it wasn't clear. Even if you would actually express it clearly, perhaps it wouldn't work. Okay, so we're sort of assuming that our previous notion is perhaps incorrect. We're questioning that notion. So according to the Ran, the Gemara is working like this. Step one was, if he says Hakama today, which implies Hafara tomorrow, does that work? Assuming it does not work, why? And in the Gemara's words, it's because he didn't say the Hafara for tomorrow. And, says the Ran, perhaps we could even go a step further. That in concept, this can't work. Once you make Hakama today, you can no longer make Hafara tomorrow, even if you state it clearly. So if that's the case, what about the next question? That leads us to the next scenario. We can ask further. Amar la mufri lichi lemachar. Suppose he didn't express Hakama at all. He started with tomorrow. He referenced Hafara for tomorrow, and he stopped. Mufar lichi lemachar. Ma'u. How do we treat that approach? Miyamrin, and shall we say lemachar lematzi mefer? He can no longer affect Hafara tomorrow. You know why? Right? Because when he said Hafara tomorrow, what's implied? That today the nether stands. Once the nether stands, it can no longer be revoked. Right? That's the new understanding, according to the Ran. That once he gets the nether going for today, you can no longer be made for tomorrow. So likewise in this case, although he didn't clearly enunciate Kiyum, it's rather just implied from the fact that he's being made for tomorrow, perhaps that's sufficient to generate a Kiyum for today, and then once it's standing, it no longer can be collapsed. Or shall we say, given the late Amarlag, Kayam Lichayim, the fact is he didn't say, I'm affirming the nether for you today. All he said was, I want Hafara tomorrow. That's it. Perhaps this that he said, that it should be Mufar tomorrow, he meant that the Hafara should begin today, for tomorrow. Right? So he's interested in tomorrow for some reason. And he understands that the Hafara will begin today. He never meant to be Makayim it for today. So, is the nether standing or is it collapsed? Perhaps you'll say, even though he didn't actually clearly say Hakama for today, but the fact is he indicated Hafara is specific to tomorrow, which means today it's Mekuyam, given the Kimu Hayayim, it's an implied Kiyam for today, Lamachar Command Isedami, and therefore, come tomorrow, you can no longer disrupt the nether because it's been affirmed, it's been established from today. Assuming this system won't work, the Hafara can no longer be applied to a nether which had Kiyum, even if it was just an implied Kiyum. That's it. It stands forever. Assuming that's the fact, that leads us to the next question. Amar la Kayam Lichi Shah. Suppose it's not from one day to the next. Right? Suppose it's all on the same day. Same day service. So within the day of his Shmiyah, the day which he became aware of the nether, he says both things. Kayim Lechi Shah. I want the nether to stand for just one moment, for 1 hour. Ma'u. How do we deal with this expression? Shall we interpret what he said as follows? The Kiyum applies now, but in a moment from now, in an hour from now, the nether will have Hafara, will be cancelled and disrupted. So is that considered like a Hafara? Or perhaps, the fact is he didn't clearly say it, and for Hafara you have to actually verbally negate the nether. This just doesn't do the job. And therefore you have a nether mekuyim. Assuming that's correct. That since he didn't actually say Hafara, we don't see Hafara. Miu amar lamai. Next question. Suppose he did say, I want Hafara on this nether in an hour. What is the halach? Mi amrinan, shall we say, kivan the kimai, since when he says Hafara hafara starts in an hour, what does that sound like? It sounds like until that hour, until the hafara, there should be kiyam. So once it's mekuyim, it's mekuyim. We can no longer disrupt it. Or perhaps, shall we say, kivan the kula yom barakama ubar hafarahu. You see, in this case, where it was all related to the same day, in contrast to the previous discussion where it was from one day to the next. Here it's all the same day, and during the day of Shemiyah, you can do hakama, you can do hafara, and therefore no harm was done. Ki amar mufar l'chil achar shah mahani. Since he clearly says he wants the hafara to take place sometime today. Okay, so wait an hour for the hafara, but he wants the hafara today. It's still within the time limit. It's still within the Yom Shemiyah. So who cares that he was mekayim it for just a short moment, a short time? Who cares? But the fact is, it's still the day of. He can still access the nether and disrupt it. Mahani. So perhaps the hafara works. So we had sort of a chain arrangement of questions, and we're actually going to have a right to the last shayla that we raised. So he wants hafara on that day, but not right now. First he wants it to stand, and then he wants to disrupt the nether. Does that work? Shall we say once the nether was mikuyim, that's it? That's its permanent state. Or if it's still within the same day, perhaps he can come back and be made for the nether. Toshma, here comes a raya to this shayla. Harei nazira. Anisha gets up and says, I am committing to becoming a nazira, to follow the halachas of nazir. V'shama bala, her husband, overhears this commitment. V'amar, he says, me too, v'ani. I also want to be a nazir. Says the Mishnah, ein yachol lohafer. He cannot come back and disrupt his wife's commitment, which he typically would be able to do. You know why? Here it's different. He has already confirmed her neder. Right? He has shown his approval by saying va'ani. That is tantamount to Q. Asks the Gemara, okay, he wanted her neder to stand for a short moment, temporarily, enough to give him that opportunity to latch onto that neder, to draw from that commitment upon himself. But once he's done using her commitment, using her neder, he wants her neder to be disrupted. V'amai, why does her nazirus stand? Nema, we shall say, v'ani. The amar alhu, when he said v'ani, right? The word v'ani isn't necessarily an all-time affirmation regarding her commitment. The amaru al nafshay, the have nazir. It was specific to his own personal status. The vani was in relation to his own commitment. I too want to be a permanent nazir. I want to be a nazir. But I never meant to allow her to be a nazira. Aval harei nazira dila, but her commitment, the shah achas kaima. I wanted to stay for a moment, right? To allow me to latch onto that, to draw from that as the source for my nazirus. The shah achas kaima, Allah achar shah. But after I'm done using her nazirus, iboy leifer. At that point, perhaps it's up to me. If I wish, I can disrupt her nazirus. Right? I never meant to allow her to stick with her nazirus for real, for the time being, until I'm finished using that nazirus as a source for my own nazirus. If so, why does the Mishnah say that the husband cannot turn around and be mefer? Oh, that's a raya to our question. Lav mishum, isn't it because of the kivan the kimai? Because once the husband was mekayim or nether. How was he mekayim? By the mere fact that he said va'ani, which indicated approval, consent. Once you have a kiyam, once you stamped it, you can no longer be mefer. Answers the Gemara, no. Loi, there's a difference here. Because perhaps over here, kol va'ani, when a fellow says va'ani, it's as though he was mekayim it permanently, not just for the time being. Keman de amar kayam lechi lo'ilam dami. It's as though he He was Mekayim it for all time. True, if he would have said, I want it to stand for just 5 minutes, and then I want to address it, perhaps that would work. Well, not sure, but perhaps it would. Here it's totally different. When he says Va'ani, in response to her commitment, what's he saying? What message is he sending? I want to be a real Nazir, and I'm copying yours. I'm latching onto yours, which is also a real Nazirus. So he's clearly indicating that her Nazirus is real. The Rogachover Goyin in Sofnas Paneach has a unique explanation to this Gemara. He says because when he says Va'ani, what he's saying is that my Nazirus will mirror her Nazirus. So basically what he's saying is that as long as he's a Nazir, that's confirming her Nazirus. And since he wants to be a Nazir, for 30 days or whatever, at every moment that he is keeping to his Nazirus. So it's not just the actual, commitment that's a kiyum. He learns that the kiyum, the fulfillment of the Nazirus, living as a Nazir per se, moment by moment, day by day, that in itself serves as a confirmation, as consent to his wife's Nazirus. Because his Nazirus is drawing from her Nazirus. So the actual kiyum of his Nazirus, living as a Nazir, is a constant confirmation on her commitment as well. Interesting insight into the Gemara. Okay, so bottom line is, we know that typically you have to say what you have in mind, and implication could be very tricky. So we had all kinds of questions regarding what's considered hafara, an implied hafara. Is that enough? Maybe not. What if he actually says hafara, but by saying the hafara he implies that there was going to be some sort of moment of kiyum as well? Does that work? Can you have just a short-lived kiyum? That was an interesting question. What about if it's all the same day? Does that work? And we thought we had a raya, which did not really pan out. Okay, so back to basics. We know that a daughter who is unmarried and still young enough to be in her father's rishus, meaning until she becomes a boigeres, until she's 12 and a half, is considered in her father's rishus. He has control over her nedarim. Now, once she's married, husband has total control. But in that interim stage, mu'urasa, na'araha mu'urasa. So, she's old enough to make a neder, but she's not yet a boigeres, which means she's still in her father's control, but she's engaged. A fellow was Mekadisher. At this point, father and her husband, a future husband, will have joint control over her nedarim. Says the Mishnah Mesa'av. Suppose she had a neder made in that during that period in her life, and her father passes away. Can the husband take over for the father? Lo nisreikna rishus labal. This reikna means to pour out, to spill over, to transfer. The father's zechus, his rights to her nedarim, does not get transferred to the husband. So basically she's stuck. She's in limbo. Because her father and husband were meant to jointly address her nedarim. Father is no longer here. Husband can't assume total control. But meis habal, if the husband dies at that point, during the period of engagement, this works. Nisreikna rishus la'av, everything goes back to the father, who seems to be the primary controller over her nedarim. So once the Baal, who is just secondary to the to the scene, is no longer here, father takes total control. Here's an example where father's power is stronger than the husband's. Right? So father passes away, husband can't take over. Whereas if husband passes away, father does assume or reassume total control over her nedarim. But davar acher, in another facet, we find that husband is stronger than the father. In what way? Sha'abal mefer a beggar. Beggar is a lashon of a boigeres. Once she turns boigeres, husband has total rights over her nedarim, as we'll see in the Gemara. Va'av einay mefer bebeger, as opposed to the father, who cannot do hafara once she turns a begeres and leaves his jurisdiction. So we have father's advantage, which is nisroikna, and husband's advantage, which is begeres. My time, asks the Gemara. I understand that when husband passes away, father assumes total control, as we're going to see in the next line of the Gemara. We have a pasuk for that. But why doesn't it work the other way around? If father passes away, why can't the chasam have total control? He's the only one in her life. Why can't he, on his own, do the hafara? My time, the pasuk says, "Binu urea beisavia." Beisavia. There's something called a father's household. So even if the father is no longer alive, she still identifies with him, part of his household, and she's still somewhat, connected to her father, identifies with her father. And even if he's not around, husband can't just step in and take over. He can't exercise exclusive rights to her Nedarim. He needs the father to help him out. And since the father is not here to help him out, the Neder must be left as such, alone. So Meis HaBaal, this is in Lushuslav. But if the husband passes away, father takes total control. How do we know this is true? Amar Rabbi, the pasuk says. First, the pasuk speaks about a single daughter whose father will be mefer the Nedarim. Then the pasuk continues. She gets engaged to a man with her Nedarim. Pasuk says that the chassan, the fiancé, the future husband, who we call the Baal. After all, she is an Eshes Ish already, even though she's not really married, but she is already Mekudeshes. So this fellow will actually do hafaras Nedarim. Okay? The question is, what happens if he passes away? So while he's here, he joins the father in doing hafaras Nedarim. What if he's not here? Passes away at that point. So we make a drasha. The pasuk says, "V'imhoyoy siyalish." Havaya means, getting engaged. Kedushin. We have a double expression of kedushin. We're speaking about two types of engagements. Makish, koidmei or koidem. There's a gersa havaya shnia lekoidmei havaya rishayna. We're going to connect two states, two periods in her life. So this Isha got engaged the first time. Then the husband passed away. Now she's awaiting a new engagement. Be'ez Hashem, Karev. Right? So the pasuk here is connecting her first engagement, experience with the forthcoming engagement experience. Basically, it means to say that her husband, her fiancé, passed away. So Torah is alluding to that type of situation. So an Isha in that state, in whose hands is she? Who will access her Nedarim? Answer is the father. How do we see that? We connect, we compare, we match up the moment in time which preceded her first engagement, when she was basically in her father's possession, her father's rishus. We're connecting that period in her life to the current period, when she's anticipating a new engagement. Basically means after her fiancé passed away. And we say like this: Makish koidme havaya shniya. We connect, we compare, we match up the moment in time which precedes her new, hopefully upcoming engagement, because her chassan passed away. So we're connecting that period in her life, to the time in her life which preceded the first engagement, when she was totally in her father's hands. There was no chassan in her life yet. When we say Ma koid mi havaya rishayna, just as at the time which preceded her first engagement, who was in control? Av mefer l'chodei, father alone did the afara. There was nobody else to speak of, right? Av koid mi havaya shniya, likewise. The period prior to the new upcoming engagement, Av mefer l'chodei, father will exercise total control. And from here we learn the concept of nisroikna. So although the arus, the fiancé, had been in her life until he passed away, had partial control over Nedarim before he passed away. Once he's gone, it's over. It reverts back. It reverts back to the original status, where the father alone will have total control. Asks the Gemara of Emahanamili, perhaps this idea will only be applied in limited fashion. B'nedarim shleiniru la'aris, only to those nedarim which the aris, the chassan, never experienced, never heard of. He wasn't aware of them. He never sort of acquired them. So she got engaged. She made nedarim. The aris never found out about it before he passed away. So perhaps those nedarim which were never really acquired, never appreciated by the aris, will indeed revert back to her father and have him do the hafara on his own. But perhaps nedarim which the aris did know about. And he could have potentially got involved with those nedarim. So perhaps they identify with the aris as well, and you can't disengage them from the aris. So perhaps even if the aris passes away, father can't totally control those nedarim. Maybe. Answers the Gemara, well, you wouldn't need a new pasuk for that. Even nedarim shleiniru la'aris. Because if we're only speaking about those specific nedarim which were not really connected to the aris, we already know. We already know that the father can take care of those nedarim. Mi bin urea beisaveo nafka. We have the previous psukim that a girl who's unmarried is in her father's rishus regarding nedarim. Right? So since the aris never heard about those nedarim during the engagement period, it's so simple to us, it's so obvious, says the Ran, that if the aris backs away, he dies, he's not around anymore, of course the father can reassert control over those nedarim, which were never in the hands of the aris. It's no different than nedarim which she made prior to her engagement, before the aris entered her life. So that's pashut. So what then do we need this new pasuk for? With the two havayis, alluding and comparing to two different pre-engagement periods in her life. We're speaking about a situation where the aris stepped into her life. He was aware of those nedarim and should have addressed those nedarim with the father, and then he passed away. Pasuk's telling us, father's back in business, he's the only one on the scene, and he makes the hafara. So in this sense, father is superior to the aris. But we have another aspect in which the Baal reigns supreme. But when it comes to Beigeres, Baal is stronger. Baal can do hafara on a Beigeres where husband cannot. Asks the Gemara, what's going on here? Hey Chidami, what exactly happened? When did she make the neder? In which case we say the aris, the fiancé, can do the hafara and not the Baal. Are we speaking that father was Makadasher when she was a Nara, 12 years old, and she made her neder then? Ubagra, then she became a Bagera, she's already 12 and a half. In which case, father is off the scene. Because once she's a Bagera, she's no longer Bishusavia. It's limited to the Na'arus stage. The Bagera, she's out of his hands. But perhaps the Mishnah is suggesting that the aris on his own can do the hafara at this point. Why? How did he suddenly assume total control over the nedarim? Haven't we already just learned that this idea of nisroikna, transferring and reverting and all that, that's only from husband to father, whose role is primary, is stronger, is more powerful, more effective than the aris. But it doesn't work the other way. Aris can't regain control over the nedarim. He can't assume exclusive monopoly over her nedarim. Let's analyze this halach. We know that when a father passes away, his daughter is no longer under his control. And the Iran brings that there's no Yerusha to the sons, it's only Avodim go to the sons, but not daughters, right? So, the schus that the father has is limited, to his lifetime. Ubagrus mitziyam rishus av, and likewise we know, based on a pasuk which says, bin ureo beisavia, she's only in his control during the years of Katana and Nara. When she's a begerish, she's out of his hands. Let's compare the two situations. Ma misa lo nisroik rishus labal, just like by misa, we just learned the whole sugya. When a father passes away, the Baal does not assume total control. There's no nisroikna going from father to husband. Av bagrus le nisroikna l'shus l'Baal. Likewise by bagrus, which is also a way of her leaving father's rishos. Husband doesn't assume total control. Just because she left the father's rishos, husband can't take that over. So what does the Mishnah mean that a husband can totally be mefer by begeris as opposed to the father? Elo shakitcha kishi begeris. Oh, apparently we're speaking. She was already a begeris to start with. She got engaged, so she's out of her father's rishos. Now the Ran, based on the Gemara later, tells us that we're speaking that she's already past her wedding date, at which point her husband, or let's call it, future husband, has to look after her, pay her bills, has to feed her. At which point we say that any Nedarim that she'll make is dependent upon his wishes, is contingent upon his approval and consent. It's just the way an Isha thinks. He supports me, I want to make sure he's okay with what I'm doing. So that grants him access to her Nedarim. It's conditioned upon his approval. And that's the case that the Mishnah is speaking about. Shekitcha Kishe Begeris, engaged her when she was already Begeris, out of her father's rishos. So even though this fellow is just an Orus, but since he's already supporting and feeding her, he can do Afaras and Nedarim on his own. Okay, fair enough. Problem is, Hatanina Chadazimna. We already have a whole Mishnah about this on Daf Ayin Gimel, which says Habegeres Sheshas Oyibei Chodesh. A Begeres was engaged, and it's 12 months later. It's time to get married, etc., etc. So why the repetition? Now, before we answer that question, we'll answer the question with another question. We'll just analyze that Mishnah first. Hoga for Kasha. Now, the wording of that Mishnah is inherently difficult to understand. Just a technical question here. Amras, first you say Habegeres Sheshas. You say it's a begeris, and you say she had to wait 12 months, past the wedding date. In which case, the husband has to support her, etc., etc. Well, the question is, begeris lomali 12 chodesh. Once she's a begeris, she's already, thinking, marriage. She's already preparing for the marriage, and the Chachamim don't require a 12-month wait period. We don't have to give her 12 months to prepare. Begeris belamad yem sagilov. 30 days is more than enough time to finish up her wedding preparations. So why would the Mishnah stipulate that there needs to be a 12-month wait period between engagement and marriage? This is a side question. The more answers, you're right. Tani, let's revise, let's modify the Mishnah. Begeris we add a vav. Begeris v'sheshas oyibei chodesh. That whatever it is, the wedding date arrived. It's a begeris who only needed 30 days, or a nara who needs 12 months. Bottom line is, wedding date is here. He's supposed to marry. For some reason, wedding is postponed. He's supporting her, and that empowers him to do Afaras and Nedarim because she's noider al da'atay. Okay, so we addressed the the side point in the Mishnah. But Mekamokam Kasher. Bottom line is, why the repetition? Discussing it here, discussing it there. That once he's supporting her, he has a right to Afaras and Nedarim. Why the redundancy? By the same says the Gemara, either we can say like this, Hachad Dafka, that the Mishnah by us is the main source for this halacha. That what? That once you get to the point of Mezoinais, he's feeding her, supporting her Nedarim are contingent upon his consent. So our Mishnah, Daf Ayin Amar Aleph, is the focal point for this halacha. The reason why in Daf Ayin Gimel we discuss it again, because we want to present this as subject to machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanon, which pretty much generates the formula called stam b'achakach machlekes, when we have a Mishnah which is anonymously stated, and then later on we have a machlekes on that same topic, then it reduces the power of the stam, which typically indicates that that's the halacha. But once we have a machlekes which follows the stam, it sort of puts that in question. That's one way to answer. Another way to explain this redundancy is Begeras Dafka. Now, the Mishnah Daf Ayin Gimel is the ikar, source for this idea, for this halacha, and the Mishnah Bayos isn't really the focal point of this subject. Rather, we're just trying to complete a matching list. I did the Nasav Reisha Bazeh. Once we're on the topic of highlighting differences and preferences and privileges, let's say, of the father over the husband. So we go and we complete the list. Nasiv Seif and Nami Bazeh. So we finish the list by saying, well, the father has an advantage over the husband has an advantage over the father as well regarding this halacha of Beigeres. So we're just citing a complete matchup here. It's not the point that we're trying to focus on this halacha. We have one mile of the father, the strike, one mile for the husband. The idea of being made for by the Beigeres. So according to this approach, explains the Ran, being that the main topic of discussion in our sugi is not regarding this halach of the Beigeres, so it doesn't really qualify as a stam mishnah. And it's just like agav. It's just brought in as a side point. It doesn't really qualify as a stam mishnah, and it wouldn't be considered stam ba'achakach machlekes. Okay, just to summarize, we started with a fellow who said, I want to be Mekayim today. Does that mean tomorrow there's a hafara? Does that work? Does it not work? What if he says hafara tomorrow? Does that indicate a hakama today? We're not sure. What about if it's both on the same day? We're not either sure. And we ended with the Mishnah, where a father has an advantage regarding the sreikna, which means that if the husband passes away during the engagement period, father assumes total control over the Nedarim, but it only works in that direction. However, if Baal passes away, if Av passes away, Baal cannot assume total control. Both are learned from Psukim. However, there's an advantage to the husband over the father in the case of a Beigeres, where a father totally loses control over his Beigeres daughter, as opposed to a husband. We're speaking, of course, again about a Chassan. Even if she's Beigeres, and they're not yet married, but once he's supporting her, we say Al Da'as Ba'alahi Nederes, and he can exercise his control over her Nedar. All the best to you, Psuras Toivis, and lots of Siyat L'Shmaya.